All right, I have exactly 34 minutes left to do my talk, so there's probably not going to be time for questions, but I'm not leaving after this talk, so if you have questions and I've run out of time, then please just grab me in one of the breaks or something like that. Also, the next talk's coming up, we've got hardware hacking, the Internet of Things here, so that's an easy one. But if you are more of a detection as code person, that's upstairs, out the door and upstairs. So make your choices now whilst I talk, because you might not have much time to move by the time I'm done. This talk is asked to put something together, like the opening talk for the day, something high level to inspire you all. Not sure I'm going to achieve that. I've got some notes in the slides to try and help me with that and lead you towards a high level inspirational talk. But if anybody's seen me talk before, most of what I do is computers are awful, this industry is awful, isn't it all just awful? So this will be 95% that, and then I'll have one slide at the end that says, but maybe things will get better if we work hard, or something to that effect. Also, I should probably mention that, you know, when we have talks like this, we all have bias, we all have a certain background. I'm a penetration tester, so most of the time, I don't really care a great deal about governance, risk, compliance, policies, all of that kind of thing. I care, can I hack the thing? And if I can hack the thing, what's the worst case scenario from that? So a lot of what I talk about is kind of that offensive side of things and just really like, academic research is awesome, but can I hack it today? So if I seem a little bit biased in that direction, a little bit biased towards offensive security, then I am. For those who haven't seen me talk before, I'll do one introduction slide so you know who on earth you're listening to. And also to enable me better networking, because you'll know what I'm interested in. And if you want to talk to me in the networking breaks, then great. You'll know what I like. I had presented, I'd prepared about 30 slides, which are, as previously mentioned, computers are awful, isn't it all awful? But we're in a second going to go into a short detour, because we're talking about security and I flew here. So, airport security, what a wonderful experience that is. And some of the other speakers were just down the front here plugging our laptops in, checking everything was working. And the other speakers who had flew here all had similar stories of, oh dear God, isn't security awful? So I'll do a short detour to talk about that. If you haven't seen me talk before, my name's Holly Grace Williams. I'm a penetration tester at a company called Akimbo. I hack things for a living. That's a short story. I also work for Mountain Rescue. I'm in the Ball and Pennine team, so I like to touch grass a lot and drag people off mountains. And also, I'm a SOTA operator. If you're not the right kind of nerd to know what Summits on the Air is, don't worry about it. If you are, networking break, let's talk. There is a SOTA summit less than a mile from here. If I disappear at lunch, that's where I'm going. Right, so I was asked to put together a presentation, and I put together all of my slides, and I get everything sorted, and I think I have a good story for it's not all awful, but if we work really hard, it'll get better. And then last night, I flew here, and I had the wonderful experience of going through airport security, which thankfully, one of the other speakers has informed me, is not as bad as TSA in America. So whilst I'm going to complain an awful lot about airport security and how I think in part it's a little bit representative of broader security and certainly somewhat cybersecurity. It could always be worse. It could be TSA. So, one of the things that I want to talk about, I've kind of roughly got three things that I want to come out from this presentation. One of the things is I want to talk to the students out there and the people who are new to this industry and talk to you about how cybersecurity isn't going away. And the fact that we keep getting told that computers will replace us and AI will replace us and all of that. In fact, when I was writing my notes this morning to make sure that I had a cohesive story, one of the things that I remembered was when I was much younger than I am now, as in school, I remembered saying that I wanted to be a computer programmer. I was obviously wrong, but don't judge me. I was young. Penetration test is much better. But at the time, I thought programming is what I wanted to do. So on our careers day, and I'll have been 14 or something like that at the time, easier maths for you all, 20 years ago, I said I want to be a computer programmer. And my form tutor at the time said, what's the point of that? Don't computers these days practically program themselves? And that was like my first kind of public, I think I want to work with computers, and immediately getting shot down. So if you're a student or if you're kind of new in the industry, you know, less than 2 years, something like that, it's a fantastic industry and it's not going away. And whilst I got told computers are going to program themselves, you'll probably get told AI is going to replace you and you won't have a job soon. It's not true. Or at least it wasn't true for me, and I don't believe it'll be true for you. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, I think an awful lot of cybersecurity is kind of performative, and a lot of people do some things in security because it looks good and we can point to an action that we made. And you're all professionals. I'm not saying any of you do it, but I am saying it's a very easy thing to do, both consciously and unconsciously. I'll talk about phishing in a little while, and no doubt phishing's a great example of this, where, we run phishing campaigns to improve our security awareness. Does it really? We'll talk about that in a second. But just generally, I want to introduce the idea of security theatre, and I'll talk about that in a second. And then for those that are interested, like I say, I'm a penetration tester, and I'll talk to you about how my job has changed over the last 10 years. Also, I've not been testing for 10 years, but we'll get to that in a second. How my job's changed over the last 10 years. And the short story is it hasn't. Pen testing is a fantastic job. It's very, very interesting. I get to do some really cool things. I hack computers. My job's awesome. There's 2 or 3 slides in about that. But this short detour, the thing that I wanted to stick in here is this idea of security theatre, because boy, do you get hit in the face with the idea of security theatre when you go through airport security. So, as previously mentioned, I'm the kind of nerd that's interested in radio systems. So I'm coming through airport security and I have this bag with me. There's nothing interesting in this bag. It's yesterday's dirty laundry now, I'm afraid, because I flew out yesterday, a waterproof jacket, and a high-frequency transceiver and an antenna system, which airport security don't know what is. And of course, I expected that. I am traveling with some unusual electronics. Who in the room isn't? Let's be honest, You're all probably traveling with some weird things. Some of you may have even had to go through airport security. So I knew that this was going to be a problem, and I knew that there's some items in my bag that they would be somewhat interested in. One of them is I'm traveling with a lithium battery. Aircraft don't like lithium batteries, but it's fine. It's below the threshold, all of that kind of thing. So I'm prepared in my bag, got everything in pouches, so that when I get to the bins where you have to strip everything out, I can go laptop, HF transceiver, antenna system, and it's all nice and laid out, and whichever bit they want to look at, they can. And I go through security and I'm watching as the bag goes through the scanner, and of course it gets pushed off to the additional screening section. We knew that was going to happen, and I'm trying to guess which bit is it that they're interested in. So they point to one of the pouches and they go, "What is in this?" Right, so HF transceiver, right? I mentioned that previously. It's an amateur radio thing. It allows us to talk across the world. It's very, very nerdy. And I just kind of go, "A radio?" And they go, "Okay." Move on to the next one. And eventually we get to this thing, which is on the side of my bag. And anyone who's seen photographs that I've been posting may have seen this already because I posted this on LinkedIn. And she pointed to this on the side of my bag and she said, "What is this?" And I said, "This is an antenna." Right? If anyone's seen antenna systems before, it looks like one of these. I'm like, "This is an antenna. It goes with the radio." And they go, "Fine. Can you demonstrate its use?" I can demonstrate its use. So I'm now standing in airport security, holding up a very, very long line. Whoever's in charge of the lights, don't worry, I'm not going to hit them. But the point is, this thing extends to 5.2 meters, and I am demonstrating its use in airport security. Got plenty of room before I hit anything important. Let me know if you hear a thud. Right. It still goes up. So I'm standing there in airport security demonstrating its use. And I was wondering about the other things that people might be traveling with. Somebody told me a story of they have like a folding comb, like a hair comb, and it looks a bit like a pocket knife. So when they went through airport security, they said, "What is this?" "So it's a comb for my hair. It's for combing my hair." I said, "Can you demonstrate its use?" And this wonderful thing that somebody would think this might be a knife and give you it and say, "Can you demonstrate its use?" Wild to me. So I'm standing in airport security with this thing, not quite all the way up for the same reason that we have here, but I'm like, "It's an antenna. It plugs into the radio. What do you want me to do?" She looks at me sternly and she goes, "I have to swap that for drugs." And that's it. So this is what I'm talking about some security theatre aspects. If I was a drug mule, and for the record, I'm not, get that on the transcript, I'm not a drug smuggler. I don't know an awful lot about smuggling drugs, but if I were to smuggle drugs, putting it in one of these things, the most suspicious looking item ever, seems to be the wrong way to go about it. And I sat there and I was at security for so long whilst they swabbed every area of that antenna, put it in the little machine and went, "Oh well, no drugs. On you go." And it was just one of those times where it's like, when she said "on you go," I was like, that's not how I thought this would play out. Just like no additional screening, no second run through the airport. We're talking about TSA pulling your bag apart and searching every little item. None of that. Wiped my antenna down for cocaine. Didn't find any. Let me through. Security theatre. I've got another more cybersecurity related example of this kind of thing. And we see it an awful lot. And I'm not saying that this aspect is bad security, but what I'm trying to get you to do is think about when we apply security controls, think specifically what is this control intending to do, and then try and come up with tests to determine if that control actually does the thing. The most common security control that I come across, I haven't actually done a survey or worked out or anything, I'm just saying very, very common, one of the most common security controls I come across is password complexity. Pretty much every Windows system that I test has complexity enabled. The intention, I am told, of password complexity, sorry, I keep saying complexity, if you're new to the industry, you've not come across this term before, complexity is that thing where you have to use uppercase, lowercase numbers and symbols. Microsoft's complexity rules are 3 of the 4 uppercase, lowercase numbers, symbols. That's complexity. I see complexity enabled everywhere. And when I talk to people about complexity, like, what is the intention of complexity? They say, to make users choose more secure passwords. And then I hack Active Directory, I dump all of the passwords, and I see that so many users are using password 1 with a capital P. And complexity has done nothing. In my opinion, as a pen tester, complexity is security theater. It is not achieving the goal. I had a really interesting one this week. I hacked a system. It was a really silly vulnerability I'll talk about in a little while. Dumped all of the hashes, and I couldn't crack a lot of the hashes, and I was doing my usual thing of dictionary words with suffixes. If anybody's interested in which word list I use the Urban Dictionary because it knows more expletives than I do, and it also knows more football clubs than I do. So just list of common words, and then I add suffixes. So capitalize the first letter and add, maybe up to 4 digits or 6 digits, and then a series of symbols. That's the kind of thing that I do. In this particular instance, not many passwords were coming out, and I was curious as to why that was. And with a little bit of extra effort and a little bit of kind of thinking about why this might be, I started cracking a few passwords, and I realized that the minimum password length was very long, something like 14 character minimum password length. And I realized that as soon as the first password popped out, that was company name 0000000 padding until the minimum password length. So another thing to consider. I'm not saying complexity is wrong. I'm not saying complexity is the devil. I'm saying if you're implementing security controls, think about what are you implementing the control to prevent, and then test it to see if it actually does prevent that. And when I hack a user who's got password 1234567 it didn't help. Okay, there we go. There's a little bit of a detail about airport security and kind of the rant that I wanted to do there. And the first lesson of this slideshow, which is around security theater and making sure that we're not doing performative security, but what you are implementing is actually helping. Cool. So this presentation was titled 10 Years of Pen Testing. I haven't been pen testing for 10 years. I've been pen testing for, I think, if the maths is right, 11 years. 10 years sounds better. There you go. I've been in cybersecurity since 2011. I've been a pen tester since 2013. So I think we're now 11 years. Either way, I'm going to talk about breaking things for a living. I was told to write a keynote, and I had a little look online of what makes a good keynote and came up with these 3 general ideas that I want to put out there. Explain how the industry has changed over the last 10 years. Let's see. Explain how the industry might develop in the future, and then inspire people for the future. I'm at least going to inspire you for the next talks, if that's the thing. So, one of the things that I want to get across is, as I mentioned, if you're new to the industry, if you're a student, those kinds of things, security is not going away. We hear all of this stuff about how next generation artificial intelligence stuff is going to solve security, and it isn't. And I think one of my justifications for that, the first bullet point on why I know cybersecurity is not going away, is software is awful and bugs will continue to happen. Here's one of my favorite bugs that you may not have come across, and if you haven't, it's a wonderful example of just users doing things the developers didn't expect and weird things occurring. This bug has been fixed now. It was around 2019 that this occurred, which is around iOS 13. And what would happen is in iOS on iPhones, if you scroll back in your calendar, you know that app you use for like booking meetings and scheduling calls and things like that. If you just keep scrolling back to about 1842, for those at the back that can't see the slide too well, just weird stuff happens. August has not the right amount of days in it, and September has 2 the 3rds. Oh, August has 2 the 5ths as well. I'd love to see how this transcribes on the transcription machine for subtitles. Point being, software is awful. We're going to keep making mistakes. In part, I think some people might say that this is because the user did something that the developers didn't expect. Other people might just say, writing software is really hard. Writing software that does not fail is really hard. But yeah, the iPhone developers probably didn't have a test case for what happens if you scroll all the way back to 1842. And if you do, weird things happen. Right, quick audience participation. Don't worry, this won't take long, and I'm not going to ask anyone individually to do anything. Also, if you are a speaker later in the day, maybe have a look around at some people's answers here. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to ask a series of questions and ask you to put your hand up so that I can gauge the audience that we have here and see who we have in the room. Put your hand up if you do not work or study in cybersecurity. You're a music student, you do AV, something like that. There is a few of you. I would be interested, you individually afterwards, come and tell me what you're doing instead of cybersecurity, because it's probably better than what we're doing. Okay. So I'm going to say next, put your hand up if you are studying cybersecurity. You're doing a degree, you're doing a PhD, something like that. How many students do we have in the room? More students. Cool. So we've counted students now, so just moving on to people who work in cybersecurity. Put your hand up if you've worked in cybersecurity for 2 years or less. So 5 years or less. 10 years or less. Really, really good mix of the audience. I'm not going to ask you to put your hand up if you've worked in cybersecurity for more than 10 years. I'm not sure it'll go up. I got one hand up there. Thank you, everybody. Very, very surprised. One of the hardest things about writing presentations like this is gauging who is the makeup of the audience and who have we got out there and how do I make something appealing. I've got a lot of people in the audience who are either studying cybersecurity or been in the industry kind of less than 2 years, so are somewhat new to all of this. That's interesting to see. And at least one person who got the hand up there for more than 10 years, so you're in the same bucket as I am, sadly. So looking at the last 10 years of testing, since, 2013, 2014, something like that, what's changed? I think very often when we look back at systems, we kind of struggle to actually place well when things happened and kind of how long ago an item was. So quickly, a look back at 2014 and to place in your mind when 2014 was. Okay, let's have a look. Who has got an iPhone 15? I was worried then because no one put their hand up. I was like, you all Android or are you all old mobile phone people? A few people were. So iPhone 15 is currently the latest one. The iPhone 16 comes out tomorrow for those people that are that kind of nerd. But current generation up until tomorrow when the slide deck becomes out of date, iPhone 15, right? 2014, iPhone 5C. There you go. You've now got it placed in your time frame. When was that? How far ago was the 2014, the iPhone 5C? The 6 came out like September 19th or something, so not quite there yet. So what's changed in the last 10 years? For an awful lot, for my day job, the day-to-day of what I do of trying to hack computers, and I, these days, spend most of my time looking at web applications and cloud systems, but earlier in my career, it's probably more infrastructure, more on-site work. There's some differences. We do less infrastructure, more cloud now. But generally, the day-to-day steps of what I do, and this is the shorter story of the methodology of a pen tester that I can give you, the day-to-day of what I work through is the same. Now, the specific vulnerabilities that I exploit, the specific technique that I use might change, but the day-to-day of a pen test and how it works is roughly the same. When I was writing this slide, I'd had like a series of really good customers and I'd had a series of quite difficult tests to do. It's a bit of an odd thing as a pen tester, but if you have a difficult test and you're not really finding a lot, you feel bad as an individual because you want to show off your skill and you want to show off your capability and you want to make the customer feel like they've had a good engagement. And if you found lots of stuff, great, you've had a good engagement. If you've not found lots of stuff, that could just be the system's nice and secure and you're not finding stuff because they've done a good approach. And that's also valuable to the customer. But it feels awful to write a short report. So that was kind of like, I'd had a series of customers like that where things were going well. And then the last couple of weeks, it's been the opposite. Who in the room's a pen tester? Who works solely in offensive security stuff? Wow, surprisingly few people. Okay. Are we a dying breed or something? Excuse me. So the pen testers will know, but other people might not know. This week, I exploited a vulnerability called MSO8067. It was a famous vulnerability, some chuckles in the room. If you aren't familiar with MSO8067, we should not be finding it in 2014. It is radical that I did find it. You might know Microsoft patches, though. MSO8, the vulnerability was fixed in 2008. 067, 67th patch, so it's generally Q4 of 2008. If you are unfamiliar with that vulnerability, I strongly recommend looking it up. Microsoft's got a write-up about how they discovered it, all of that kind of thing. Brilliant story. But yeah, that's the week that I've had where I'm trying to write this inspirational presentation about how everything's getting better. And I've had a good series of like difficult pen tests. And then this week I popped MSO 8067, which is start Metasploit and click go. Done. I'm a domain admin. So occasionally we have that kind of test where there's just something dumb on the network or something's badly configured or whatever. It happens. Thankfully now that's pretty rare, but generally the overall steps of my day haven't changed a great deal. And what I wanted to go on to then is talk about what are the concerns that we had back in 2014 and maybe in 2018 and then in 2024 and see how those concerns have changed. What are organizations working on from a cybersecurity point of view? What do they think is the next big thing? But just quickly before I do that, I came across a statistic that I hadn't seen previously and I thought it was interesting enough to present to you. What percentage of large and small, so there's two sides to this, large and small. What percentage of large and small organizations get pen tested? Does anyone want to fire a number at me? Large organizations, what percentage get tested?
65.
Okay, 65. Any advance? 30. Okay, what about small organizations, so SMEs? 5. You pessimists. Anyone think higher than 5? Anyone think a high number? Don't let the pessimists win. Cool. 6. So I've got 2 slides to show you. And one is the 2015 statistics, because of course we're looking back 10 years ago, and 2015 is the furthest back that I could get you. I realize this slide is very, very small, but blame the government, they made it. And I'm going to read it out to you. This is what percentage of organizations have active technical testing, such as penetration testing and cyber attack simulation. The dark blue is large, the light blue is small. That is 50%, this is 2015, 50% of large organizations get some type of security testing like pen testing, and 26% of small organizations. So you might think, oh, yeah, we're in the right ballpark, right? Somebody said 50, somebody said 65. The pessimist said 5. No, that's a really big number in comparison to 5. The 2015. What do people think the numbers did for 2024? Similar. Large organizations, this is now broken down into, so all organizations, they've broken it down into business and charities because they want to make statistics hard for us. So this is the average, all organizations. Companies, penetration testing, 11%. Yeah, this is really weird. The reason I wanted to put this in there is not only is it interesting that it seems to have been less organizations are doing pen testing, I assume they're doing something else instead, but it's just interesting to see that slide. And also, because of my own bias, every company gets pen tested. Because as a pen tester, every company that I work with gets pen tested. So my experience is that everybody has pen testing. But it was fascinating to me that 11% of organizations and slightly less for charities get pen tested. Okay, cool. I'm not going to have time to show you every example within this because we're running a little bit behind when I got started, but I just want to talk a little bit about back in 2014, what cybersecurity predictions were people making? It's not going to be exactly 2014, 2015, 2016, that kind of thing, but around 10 years ago, what predictions were people making and what has changed since? I'll give a few of these as examples to show you kind of my experience with the industry and how we're going. So cloud outages. In 2014, were cloud outages a major problem? Yes, probably. In 2024, are cloud outages a major problem? Yes. We haven't had a major cloud outage recently, have we? There has been a couple of changes, though. So for those that don't remember all of them, in 2017, so this is February 28th, 2017, AWS suffered what became quite a famous outage. It was the EU East 1 went down, S3 went down. It was really, really bad. But the reason that this outage is memorable to me is AWS hosted their own status page. So when their systems went down, they couldn't update their own status page. So we have learned some things. I don't know what the solution to this is. I'm not prepared to look it up because it scares me. I'm assuming Azure now hosts AWS's status page and AWS hosts Azure's status page. But I'll let a site reliability engineer get on stage and tell you that story. So back in 2017, cloud outages, huge aspect, and AWS hilariously could not update their own status page. Jump forwards a few years, we've got 2021 kind of marking for me this middle point, and we have OVH having a major outage. and their status page also being interesting that we'll get to in a second. Don't judge this gentleman, the CEO of OVH, Octave Klaber, too much for his English. I can imagine when your data center is literally on fire, you're under a little bit of duress. And also, he speaks more languages than me, so you get a pass on some of the English here. We have a major incident on SBG2, that's one of their data centers. The fire declared in the building. Firefighters were immediately on scene but could not contain the fire. The whole site has been isolated. We recommend to you activate your disaster recovery plan. This outage was very, very funny for me because I followed it on Twitter. This is 2021 before Twitter became awful. And some people will disagree with that statement. And I was following on Twitter, and some organizations were absolutely aghast that they would have to have a disaster recovery plan. No, our cloud provider is the person who's supposed to have a disaster recovery plan. And that is an actual photograph of their server room. Not a nice time. And I mentioned there's something interesting about their status page. And what occurred during this time was the CEO live tweeted the incident as 2 of their data centers burned down and 1 was partially damaged. Don't worry too much about the specifics here. It's just that the guys tweeting like once an hour of what they're up to, when they expect recovery times to be. At some points he was posting like kind of vlogs about what they're up to in both English and French, OVH being based in France. And just very, very interesting to see that occur. But 2017, major cloud outage is still a huge thing. 2021, data centers on fire. Isn't it wonderful? And then I don't need to dwell too much, but 2024, I've had a couple of outages. I think that's fair to say. So, cloud security outages, still a thing, still a problem. Cybersecurity, if you're new to the industry, if you're one of those people that put their hand up for either being a student or being in the industry less than 2 years, site reliability engineering is not going away at least. And certainly, cybersecurity is not. Deepfakes. This is another late addition to the slide deck. Google CEO said out loud, AI is more important than fire or electricity. This is actually like a compression of his quote. His actual direct quote was, AI is one of the most important things humanity is working on. It is more profound than, I don't know, electricity or fire. I think the full quote's even better. But the reason, of course, I want to bring up AI is deepfakes and the developments of AI and how it's impacting us from the point of view of things like security awareness training and things like social engineering and that kind of thing. Anyone want to guess when that was said? Wasn't last week, was it? 2018. 2018. Get rid of fire and water. We don't need it. I tried to find the earliest example of a deepfake actually being used in an attack. And I think what I have, I think, is a good contender for that. If anyone knows of an earlier example, please in the break or something tell me, or like hit me up on LinkedIn or something. I would love to know. But in September 2019, an article was posted that was at the time described as a first of a kind attack, as criminals cloned a CEO's voice. So this is AI voice cloning in, the article was posted in September 2019, but there's somewhat light on the facts as to specifically what the attack timeframe was. But yeah, deepfakes, things that we talk about now, no doubt in this conference, people will be talking about the use of AI and deepfakes. If there's no speakers talking about AI, go talk to the vendors. Someone's going to say AI to you, aren't they? So AI, yeah, not a new thing. That's something we need to worry about. I won't dwell on this slide too much, but I keep trying to use AI for cool things and it keeps failing me. This is me asking ChatGPT to make a color diagram of a UK 3-pin plug. It made a diagram of a fever dream, that's for sure. I won't dwell on that too much, but I keep doing this. I keep trying things like ChatGPT and having awful output. I currently have a project ongoing to do AI voice cloning. So if somebody is deep into that area, please hit me up in the break. I have a project that would require that, and I'm having this amount of success with it. And ransomware attacks, I'll quickly cover ransomware. I don't think I need to belabor the point. Go on, I'll have to. Go on. First ransomware attack. Somebody give me a date. Just a year. First ransomware attack. Yes. Do you know the year? It was in the 80s. That's close enough. Who here was born after 1989? You're younger than ransomware. And also, PowerPoint. I think PowerPoint was 88, if I remember correctly. I don't have it in my slides. Yes, the AIDS Trojan. Thank you very much. The AIDS Trojan. It was a ransomware. It was called a Trojan at the time. It was physically distributed on floppy, the big floppy. You guys won't remember those. I say that as if I'm like super old. I'm not. I was born after 1989 as well. But 1989, the AIDS Trojan, physically distributed on floppy disk and demanded not cryptocurrency, of course, $189 to be paid via banker's draft to a PO box. Jump forward from 1989 to 2016. Headlines. Jump forward to 2024. Headlines. I mainly included this slide. I wasn't going to belabor the point of ransomware, but mainly included this slide because this newspaper used the title Testing Times. I love a good pun. Cool. And the last thing before I kind of summarize, the broad point there was for the students and for the people who are new to this industry, you will hear constantly that, why do you need cybersecurity? AI is going to fix it all. In the same way that I was told, why do you want to be a computer programmer? Computers practically program themselves 20 years ago. Today, all of the same thing. But another funny thing happened. Something that I've been working on recently is during penetration tests, so during either infrastructure tests or when we do perimeter breaks and we get on internal networks, is to start looking around for sensitive data. This was a penetration test. I don't have the exact date on this, but it was somewhere like 2016, 2018, a test that I did. I found an organization exposed its WordPress backup. I found that through Google Dorking, because that's a cool thing. Basically putting into Google company backups, and then it's like, these backups. Downloaded those backups, pulled out the hashes from their WordPress site, cracked a whole bunch of them, can log into WordPress. The action of data mapping, trying to find data in places where it shouldn't be, and then laughing at them in the pen test report to be like, look at all of this data that I stole, hasn't changed, but the manner in which we do it has. So one of the things that my team are working on at the moment, and I'm sure many other teams are, is using artificial intelligence to make data mapping faster. Because I'm lazy, and I don't want to look through network shares all day. But if you show me a network and a penetration tester says, I have checked all of the network shares on this network and have not found a plain text password or exposed personal information, I will show you a pen tester who has not looked hard enough. It's a surprising thing, but on pretty much every pen test, I find something in an exposed network share that shouldn't be there. Two really interesting wins that I keep finding, not like every pen test, but like they do keep coming up, is virtual machine backups that are exposed, getting virtual machine disks and then downloading them. And certainly backups of things like domain controllers, things like key servers and those kinds of things. And that is one of the weirdest feelings as a pen tester, because I'll find a network share. That network share will have like a backup of the domain controller or something. I know if I download that, I've won and I can extract the credentials and that's the end of my pen test. It's fantastic. But it'll also be like 150 gigabytes. So I do right-click copy, right-click paste on my desktop, and then wait. Hope for the reliability of their network to allow me to pull 150 gigs across the network, and also see if anybody's going to notice me just absolutely ramming the network with all of the data. And in my experience, nobody ever does. Nobody ever seems to find those kind of internal data exfiltration problems. And eventually, I'll pop a domain controller. I'll either boot it up and pull creds out, or more often, just pull the creds off the disk, and that's game over. And it's one of those weird things, because sometimes when that happens, maybe I'll find the share at 10 a.m., 11 a.m., something like that. And by the time I've managed to download this copy of the domain controller and pull creds off it, it'll be like 4 or 5 p.m. And I tell the customer, "Oh, you've full compromise, isn't this awesome? Great vulnerability." And then they go, "I'm surprised it took you so long." And I'm like, get a faster network. So we use artificial intelligence to pull things like PII, those kinds of things. Not a challenging problem. If you're looking at learning artificial intelligence, if you're a pen tester or someone on the blue team and you're just looking for an interesting AI project to get you started, data mapping for PII is pretty easy. Show it a bunch of things like utility bills. Show it a bunch of things like birth certificates, and it'll very quickly become very good at detecting that data, and it'll find it all over the place in places that you wish it wasn't. And then one more point on handling data before I close out this presentation, because I've got 1 minute left, is handling data in general is bad. I keep coming across organizations that use Microsoft Excel for things that they shouldn't. This is risk register in Microsoft Excel. Who here comes across people at work using Microsoft Excel for things that they shouldn't? Microsoft Excel is the second best tool for every job. Right. I'll close that. Phishing. I won't dwell on phishing. If you can't read this from the back, this is a phishing email. It's one of those 419 scams. I'm a Nigerian prince. Pay me $100 and I'll send you $10 million. But it was a physical fax. So phishing's changed. This is an unclaimed permanent life insurance policy for $10,950,000, a big number. $10 million. Give us some money and we'll give you some money. It's one of those physical facts. So phishing's changed revolutionarily. All right. And I'll close that now. Phishing has changed because now it's emails, not faxes. So what's all the point? Should we all just give up? No, of course not. This is supposed to be a satirical, comedic presentation to get you all a little bit fired up about some interesting areas of cybersecurity. But the truth is we are making progress. And I don't just mean phishing has gone from a fax to an email. But the truth is, it is a hard problem. And when we look through all of these things, we're learning as an industry, we are developing as an industry. It's just sometimes things don't look like they're making progress, and sometimes things take longer than you want them to. And you will hear people saying, what's the point of that? AI will just take over. But we need to kind of, stand fast and do our best here. So, final thing, and then I'll shut up, is I mentioned at the beginning this idea of security theatre, and one of the things that I see a lot of organizations doing is implementing controls because they've been told to implement a control or because a control is available, things like password complexity. And anytime you either implement a control or you're looking through your systems and kind of auditing what you have in place, think through the process. What is the goal of this control? Have the goals been clearly communicated to the end user? And how will we test this control to ensure that it is effective? Because there's a huge amount of stuff out there, like password complexity, that doesn't do a huge amount. There are other controls, of course. I'm not going to go into all of the technical detail of those, but banned password lists are probably better than making me use password rather than password. So yeah, as you work through these in every aspect, think, what is the goal of the control and is it actually achieving that goal? And I'll shut up. Thank you.